Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to another episode of the American South Fishing Podcast. Got a special guest tonight, guys. James Niggemeyer is coming in, man. How are you doing this evening, dude?
I'm doing good. Yeah, I got off the water probably a little over an hour ago. Came home, ate a little food, and yeah, ready to jump into the podcast.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
So you fished the Elite Series for a while, and now you're fishing the NPFL. Is that correct?
that is correct. Yes. Yeah,
So are you excited about that? What's going on with that? Is how many years have you been fishing with those guys?
this will be my first year with the NPFL. I had I fished the Elite Series for like 11 years, and then I went over to FLW for a couple of years, and then it got bought by MLF. And then after a couple of years there, I went back to the Opens to try to requalify. One year I missed it by, I think it was 3 points. And so did that for 2 or 3 years. And man, I just see the momentum building over at NPFL. And if I'm completely honest, I appreciate the way that they're embracing the no forward-facing sonar technology. As far as I guess embracing might not be the right word, but the way that they're putting that that as one of the rules that you cannot use forward-facing. So they're basically trying to hold on to the heritage of the sport and what it is. So I appreciate that. I want to support them in that, but just the tournament organization, from what I've seen and the other anglers that I've talked to, they really like it. It's a really well run circuit, and they're really enjoying fishing over there. And sounds like they got a great team of guys there at NPFL. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, I've heard nothing but good things on mine as well. Everybody said it's really kind of like a family atmosphere over there, and that you kind of feel like that they do everything to go above and beyond to help you. So that's always exciting. And then, can you talk about more about and we don't have to have a debate about it because I feel like that's 90% of fishing right now is debating forward facing sonar, but just what the exciting part of being able to do that, and I guess from like a fan perspective, why people enjoy watching that.
Yeah, I don't mind having a discussion, or if you want to call it a debate about it. I think here's the thing that I know when NPFL made the choice to kind of step away from allowing forward-facing sonar in their tournament organization, I think there were some people that were like, against that. And really, I wasn't quite sure why, because in the sport, we did not have the choice not to compete with forward-facing sonar. So they actually gave us a choice by creating this organization. Well, initially they were, you could use forward-facing sonar, but they made the choice to kind of go back to the roots of what the sport is all about. So they gave the anglers a choice. Before there wasn't a choice, and every organization allowed forward-facing sonar. So, and now we see a shift in the tide. It looks like angler or organizations are now at least limiting it. But yeah, I think that when it comes to, it seems like it's a polarizing topic, in the sport, and I don't know that it necessarily has to be. The reality that we've always forever had a sport that did not have forward-facing sonar, and so when some anglers would rather compete in an organization without it, I'm not quite sure why there would be such pushback. To the way that forward-facing sonar has, kind of made the ripples and waves in our sport. The way that it has impacted our sport, from going from basically a new technology to literal domination of the sport. I think it's great that for NPFL is offering that to the anglers. I'm not sure if I answered your question, but
No, yeah, that's great.
yeah,
That was yeah, no, and I think for the fans too watching, because and I've seen a little bit from both sides of it, but I think one of the things that's missing now is because there's the knowledge there without forward facing of the things that people do to be successful, especially in tournaments. And that, I think that's a lot of the argument, right? Is that a lot of these guys are skipping all the knowledge that they've learned over the years with the forward facing sonar. And so that's part of it. But I think from watching a perspective of watching it, like you can kind of see the patterns that people are running when they're not using the forward facing sonar, and you can kind of you can learn something from it. And I think a lot of people like to watch tournaments and fishing like the NPFL because they can see what those kind of why everybody is doing what they're doing, as to where when you're watching a guy watch a screen in the middle of, you know, 150 foot of water, and you can't really see his screen or how he's fishing, you can't really learn anything from that.
Yeah, it is more challenging. I feel like with in regards to what anglers are and fans of the sport are really missing is the fact that we've always forever had, you know, patterns and water temperatures and conditions that affect what we do, how we do it, the lure selection, the depth, the colors, area of the lakes, those types of things that went into what we would, you know, used to be called pattern fishing, and figuring out what fish were doing in their seasonal patterns, you know, winter, summer, spring, fall, and the baits in the areas and the different things that we did throughout those seasons. And, you know, anglers and fans of the sport, I think a lot of people want to learn as much as they can. And this kind of gives them a recipe to success, like steps in, if you're like baking a cake, there's first you do this, first you do that, and then this, second, third, fourth, fifth. So that is something that I think a lot of anglers learned throughout that process. And I think that one of the things that fans and anglers of the sport are kind of missing from the forward facing sonar thing is that initially it just looks like it's, and I know there's so much more to it, and I'm not downplaying the fact that there's a skill in that, but it looks like they drop the trolling motor and they're just panning back and forth and not casting at all, actually not fishing per se until they actually see a fish on the screen. And so so for some anglers and fans of the sport, I think that there's a lot of people that are like, well, how do I, you know, how do I know how to replicate that? How do I know how to impart that in my everyday fishing? And then there's also a lot of the things that are happening with forward facing sonar when it comes to bait selection that I think some guys are keeping really secretive. So there's a lot of things that are kind of, I think, making it more challenging for fans and anglers to kind of learn more from it. And then there's the price point aspect. I mean, the reality is you know, obviously the boats are all expensive, but what you need to have in your boat in order to be capable and effective with that technology is quite a financial outlay. So I think some people are put off by that because not everybody has, you know, for $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 to put towards, you know, a unit and the kind of technology that goes with it. I mean, no doubt it is absolutely revolutionary. I wouldn't call it a silver bullet, but it is so revolutionary in the way that, you know, when some guys are literally, you know, forfeiting a period of practice just so they could, you know, scan with 2D sonar or 3D sonar, you know, side scan is what I mean to say, left and right, looking for brush piles during that whole period, like with MLF and the Bass Pro Tour. When guys aren't even fishing, they feel so secure in the technology that when it is their time to use forward-facing sonar in that period, they feel like they can catch enough weight in that one period of utilizing that technology, that really says a whole lot about where we're at in the game. I don't know that anybody would ever not fish throughout a whole period. We've never seen anything like that. So the technology has definitely given anglers a major advantage, and really the advantage, I think, in my opinion, the advantage is the fact that we are being more efficient than we ever have, because when we're utilizing forward-facing sonar, we're making a cast to a fish. And even if it's not to a fish, even just the efficiency of, there's a brush pile and I can see that my lure goes right down to the brush pile, and I'm not making errant casts over here, over there, trying to find it. So we can be so much more efficient with our time with that technology. So there's a lot of the things that it brings to the table, and then you can actually track a fish in real time. You can see its movement. You can see that, oh, it's not over on the right hand side. Oh, okay, it's over here. And I'm tracking, I'm following that fish and making literal multiple presentations to a fish while it's swimming through the water column. So the efficiency and the effectiveness, the potency of the technology is, there's nothing else that we've ever had like it. And the big thing is it's all in real time.
Yeah, I mean, and for example, like you had talked about using it to find structure or cover, where that are high efficiency areas. That's exactly like Chris Zaldane this past weekend at the Elite Series. He didn't go around throwing a dice bait or a minnow. He was actually going finding laydowns and throwing one of those 5 or 6 inch swim baits over those laydowns, and that's how he was able to be successful. So there are so many different things, and I don't want to be negative about it either, like you're saying, because there's so much negativity surrounding the sport and that right now. I think it's a great tool, but I also think that it is refreshing to see people be able to do the things they were able to do without it, and figure things out in a tournament without relying on that. But to move on from that, so obviously it's the time of year we're starting to, in most areas, especially you're in Texas, so y'all are probably really close to the spawn, or a lot of areas maybe even already there. And in my area, it's working into the pre-spawn in Arkansas. So what are some things that you really try to focus on in the pre-spawn?
The pre-spawn really, depending upon what kind of fishery I'm fishing, whether it's a natural lake or a highland impoundment or a lowland impoundment or a river, different things like that. The first thing that I'm going to look for in pre-spawn is I want to find some sort of depth near shallow flats. So basically, I want, if I'm relating to say banks or creek channels that flow, inside of a creek or out on the main lake, that creek channel swinging toward a bank. Those are areas where I feel like that's going to be the first progression of fish that are coming out of that wintertime pattern and moving towards more of a pre-spawn approach. And I feel like bass are probably more pre-spawn or spend more time in pre-spawn mode than we really realize. I think that wintertime period, obviously depending on the calendar year as far as what the weather's doing, I don't think that they're truly in that winter mode that long, well, at least here in Texas. So basically what I'm looking for is I'm looking for an area where deep water is either brushing with or creating a transition basically from that deeper water to shallow water. So a lot of times if you have a steeper bank and it's kind of coming in like that and it flattens out, that transition is going to be a great place for you to look for pre-spawn fish. And flats leading, deeper areas that lead into a flat or lead into a cove or different things like that. And then obviously creek channels, depending upon how the lake is set up, following the creek channels into a creek and looking for where those creeks actually swing closest to a bank. Those are going to be great places to do some pre-spawn fishing or look for fish that are in that pre-spawn mode. If a lake has docks can be phenomenal. They're just great. A lot of times throughout a lot of the winter period, if they have the same if they have like good depth underneath them, and if they're got a close proximity to like a creek channel, obviously, and those types of things are going to be what I'm going to look for. But I also want to look for your hard covers, whether it's rock or wood, for whatever it is. When you have that cold water period coming to an end, and it's the increase in water temperature begins, and that's going to be different wherever you are. If it's Florida, it's going to be a lot warmer here. I think once you're approaching that mid 50s, that's when pre-spawn is pretty. It's actually earlier than that, probably low 50s, and as you move towards the mid 50s, that's where you're going to begin to have more pre-spawn type activity, and those fish tend to gravitate towards like hard structures, like whether it's rock or wood. And so those types of cover in conjunction with those transition areas are definitely places to go looking for pre-spawn fish, as well as secondary points. Secondary points can be great. You go into a big bay, and the first point you come towards, that would be your secondary point. As you move into a creek arm, your secondary points, there might be 3 or 4 in a specific bay or creek, but secondary points can be great. And the ones that have a little bit steeper nature to them are better than those ones that are long tapering. So those are some of the areas. And as far as catching fish during a pre-spawn period, I really like to wind something. It might mean that I'm winding a square bill or a lipless crankbait, like a Bill Lewis rattle trap. I mean, those are just phenomenal, and they tend to work regardless of whether you have grass or you don't have grass. But a lipless crankbait, a flat-sided crankbait, and even square bills, slowing them down. Square bills can work really well. Obviously, jigs around rock and wood, always great under deeper docks, and then slow rolled spinner baits. So those are some definite baits that I kind of look towards. And then, of course, a chatterbait. What would it be in pre-spawn without a chatterbait? But that's that obviously just works in all seasons. So, but yeah, those are some baits that I definitely would gravitate towards, and those are some areas that I would begin my search to find, concentrations of fish. You're going to want to get multiple bites in an area to kind of really set up camp, so to speak, and really kind of pick it apart. Otherwise, I'm moving with a faster amount of boat speed on my trolling motor till I come in contact with more than just one fish. So those are some things that I take into consideration when doing a pre-spawn approach.
Yeah, man, I live on a highland reservoir, or near a highland reservoir. Personally, last year during the pre-spawn period, we were still finding a lot of fish with bait. So that always helps. But one of the things you always hear people say is find a 45 chunk rock bank. That's one of the during pre-spawn, and like you were saying, one of those steeper banks that's got. And I'm assuming that's for the warmth, right? The rock and the hard covers, because it warms up quickly.
That's what I've heard. I've never really noticed any kind of definite water temperature increase in that area. But one of the other things that I think is important is you want to have protected areas where your water's going to warm the first, and those would be like banks, like north facing banks and things like that, areas that are protected. But yeah, 45s are always great. Chunk rock banks, especially on highland impoundments, and even bluff banks that turn into 45s. That's another transition area, because I would say bluff banks are kind of more your wintertime thing, and then you get to those 45s, and those are where you begin that transition towards more of your pre-spawn type approach.
Yeah. So, man, I just found out that you, first off, were partnered with Danny at Brazalo.
Yes.
Baits. And so I wanted to ask you personally, you did a video about his bladed jigs. How great are those? Because I talked to him for a while. He's really proud of them. They've done a lot of work in trying to make sure that those are as good or better than the jackhammers, which with the price of those these days, trying to find one that is comparable is worth your time, because I think they're like $21 now for a jackhammer, which is extremely expensive.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just got some recently, and really I was impressed with obviously everything that Danny makes at Brazalo Custom Lures is quality. I mean, if you look at everything from the paint job to the way that it's fit and finished with the skirt being hand tied, and you don't have all the skirt bunched up on one side, or and it's all uniform, and whether it's the jigs and you got the weed guards, but more specifically the Strutter 2.0 bladed jig that he has. It's got a great trailer keeper. It's got a stout hook, and it has a blade that I haven't quite figured out. It's a little bit heavier blade, but it definitely makes that bait hunt. It'll run like a normal bladed jig, and then it'll cut out, and then it'll look like it's trying to do an evasive maneuver if something's following it. And that's something that to me is the secret sauce in a bladed jig. That's something that you really want, because a lot of times you'll have square bill or just crankbaits that they're just consistently in that deal. Like they're just going, they never change, and it looks almost mechanical. But every once in a while you'll get one that, kind of what they call hunts. And that's what the Strutter 2.0 bladed jig does. I noticed that immediately as I tied it on. I was like, wow, it's what I would call loose. It's not, it's not like it's on rails. It's, it's just finding its way through the water. And man, whenever you get a bait that does a directional change, like the Strutter 2.0, the directional change is definitely something. That's why like a top water walk the dog bait works so well, because that bait looks like it's, doing that directional change back and forth in a jerk bait. It goes up and down and side to side, and those types of baits like that get a lot of movement. And I think even with like forward facing sonar, and when they, shaking a minnow, the reason they want to shake that minnow is because they're trying to get it to look like it's getting away. And that definitely is something that I feel like can trigger strikes or get fish to really be, kind of light that predatory instinct in a fish. And man, that Strutter does it, and it's just high quality from the snap all the way to the hook, and the way the trailer keeper goes or is on there, and the way it enables that bait to stay on the back. I've just been really impressed with it just from the first time I tied it on. He's got a really good one there. He really does.
Yeah, he's actually on the Fish North Georgia podcast this evening right now.
Okay.
As we're talking. So I had a conversation with him the other day, and you got brought up, and I was like, oh, really? Well, he's actually coming on my podcast at the end of the week. So I just thought that was a cool connection. And he said, man, the biggest thing for him is like the struggle that I've had is that I am in Arkansas, and that's been the hardest market for me to get into. Like nobody knows that I'm here. So I just thought that was an interesting thing. But man, back to the pre-spawn fishing. So is there an importance you think, and you always hear people talking about, and you talked about the north facing creeks, and is there, so the west side of those areas is where the sun's going to hit first because the sun rises in the east. Do you think it's important to fish those sides first? Because I hear a lot of people talking about that's where the sun's going to hit first. The fish know that's going to be the banks they're going to go on first. Is there any truth to that, you think?
I definitely think there's truth to that. And another thing, at least here in this part of the country, is when we have a south wind, that's going to push all that warm water, that surface temperature water, towards those north facing banks. And I feel like this kind of sounds crazy, but it gathers that warm water in those areas. And so it's kind of a twofold. Not only do you have the sun on those areas, but it's taking the warmest part of the water, which is the top part, and just blowing it into those pockets and bays and creeks. And it definitely makes a difference in the way that those fish will set up. And the thing about it, though, is it's a guideline for finding fish. Sometimes I find them on the south facing bank. Sometimes I found them on the southeast corner. There's definitely, depending upon how the lake lays out, sometimes you'll have just a little, like a bend, and there's like an area that ends up being a secluded, protected area from a hard north facing, or like, that's the other thing. We have our cold fronts blow out of the north. We have a northern will blow in, and that cold air will also be protected on those north facing banks. But sometimes on those southern ends, you have some areas where it kind of wraps around and there's a little bay tucked away, and it's just really sheltered. And so you can still find fish in those areas. So yeah, those north facing banks are definitely a key, but there are times when I'm looking for areas that are just sheltered from that north wind.
Right. That makes sense, man. There have been, we've picked up on so many different things. I have, especially from some of the guys that I've talked to. So a lot of the guys talk about channel swings, like whether that be in a creek or a main lake channel swing, if you're on a river lake that goes into like a creek, like into a cut or a pocket. And so I actually went back and looked at some of the areas that I caught fish in pre-spawn in the last couple of years in the tournaments that I fished in, and noticed that every single one of them was next to a channel. Like the pocket that I was successful in, there was a channel swing into that pocket. And so what reason is that? Because I had somebody talk about that, but people were wanting further explanation on why that is.
The theory that I've heard, and the theory that I kind of subscribe to, is the fact that basically that channel swing, obviously wherever that swings into a structural element, you basically have an area where, and we like to think that when it's the winter, fish stay deep, but even during a 2 or 3 day warming trend, fish in the winter are going to slide up and take advantage of feeding opportunities. Or that's the other thing about shad. Shad are constantly moving up and down in the water column, and those fish are going to move with them. And so I feel like that channel swing bank enables a bass to move shallow without going very far horizontally. They can just make that move by just elevating in the water column and getting in that shallow zone, and they really haven't gone very far. They haven't gone like 200 yards into the back of a creek or things like that. But now they've just moved shallow just by elevating in the water column. So I think there's something that's really appealing to the fish. They can be more effective as far as how they track down prey and things like that. That's what I've heard, and it seems to make the most sense to me.
Absolutely. So, man, what are some of your favorite colors to throw during the pre-spawn? And I know that's probably going to be lake specific, but
there's a lot. Obviously, this is going to sound so cliche, and everyone's like, man, well, everyone throws like a Rayburn red rattle trap, or there's another color called Baton Rouge, which is basically just like a solid, almost lipstick red color. There's something about the red colors, whether I'm fishing a little finesse balsa, flat-sided crankbait, or I'm fishing a bladed jig. There's something about that red color that you would think that year over year they kind of get tired of it, but there's something about that color that really appeals to the fish in that pre-spawn period. And I'm not even sure why that is. Another thing that we've always done, or a lot of anglers have done in a lot of bait companies, even Brazalo Baits does this, is Brazalo Custom Lures, is they have a spinnerbait and they have like a red kicker blade. So you might have a chartreuse and white spinnerbait, and you have a red Colorado in front of a willow leaf blade. And really, I think a lot of bait companies are kind of doing that now. And that's a bait that you see a lot of people gravitate towards in the pre-spawn period. I don't know what it is about that red. Sometimes I feel like the reason the red is so strong is because, you have some rains, or you have snow melt off or runoff, and it kind of adds some silt to the water. And so that red just shows up a little bit more. But even in areas, even in lakes with a lot of grass, red just works really well. I really don't know what the answer to it is, but that's definitely one that I would gravitate towards is just, oh, I've always got tied on in the pre-spawn period. And the other thing, the other color I like is a gold blackback. Those gold kind of shad patterns like that, and whites. If I'm really kind of, like you mentioned that there's a lot of in the pre-spawn period, you've noticed that there's still a lot of fish that are, hovering around or pursuing bait, which is why jerk baits are so good. But a white colored jerk bait, but a white colored crankbait, whites are really good. So, but you could kind of streamline it down to either something dark like a green pumpkin or a red. Those would be like on my darker hues. And then something shiny like gold or even a chrome blue back, just those kind of really flashy colors for like on a bright day, or when you want to get a lot of attention drawn to your bait. And then white ones as well. They just really seem to do well as far as imitating bait fish. But that way it gives you a little bit of, different hues from something really dark to light. And then I try to keep it as simple as I can, but there are some subtle nuances when it comes to colors that I do gravitate towards, as far as worms and things like that also.
Yeah. But man, what are some tips that you would give to somebody who has never had any success throwing a jerkbait?
Wow. The first thing I would say about fishing a jerkbait is if you've never had any success with it and you're getting frustrated with it, definitely go out and don't bring anything else. Another thing that I would say, if you know of a little pond, just go out there, and that way you have a captive audience. What I mean by those fish aren't going to be very far. You're going to be able to show your bait to a fish and just catch a couple of fish. Just kind of, increase your confidence in the bait, and really begin to kind of take what you're learning from the pond, and then from your trips to the lake without anything else. And that way you can really kind of get an idea, but you're forcing yourself to put in the time, because that's what it all is. Every bait is, you got to put the time in order to do well with it. And then I would definitely say that varying your cadence. Sometimes it's, quick, it's jerk, 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 pause, jerk, 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 pause. And then sometimes it's jerk, pause. And then sometimes it's a pull. Sometimes it's a snap of the rod. So being able to vary your retrieve to kind of give the fish something different, so that they can basically essentially tell you what they see that they like in what you're presenting to them. That's definitely something that helps. And I wouldn't go too crazy with a lot of different colors. I would probably do a chrome, a shad pattern, really just those two colors, some sort of shiny, metallic chrome, and then some sort of a white Tennessee shad, or one that's really good is like a matte shad is a good color. And then there's also one that's just kind of a bone-ish color, but French pearl is like another color that a lot of people throw also. But don't go crazy with colors. Grab a couple that work really well, or that have a history of being really good fish producers, and then just put the time in. That's probably the thing. And then definitely change your presentation and your speed, and that should get you some success on a jerkbait.
Cool. Yeah, man. I've had a lot of people that I know who have asked me about it, and man, I'm not a jerkbait fisherman myself, but I was like, I'll definitely ask about that. So another question about a bait, and then I would like to talk about kind of your season coming up with the NPFL. What do you like to throw swim baits much?
I do. I really do like to throw swim baits, and I think pre-spawn's probably one of the best times to throw the larger varieties. But I'll throw everything from the little finesse ones all the way up to the really larger ones, the 6 and 7 inches as well.
Yeah. I've had a guy that I've been messaging with out of Northwest Arkansas who's been giving me all kinds of tips, because he's like, man, you really need to be throwing a swim bait. And I was like, I don't throw swim baits, And so I just wanted to see what your thoughts on a swim bait were. But man, so NPFL, when's your first event?
My first event is the middle of March, and It's a little bit of a later start than normal, but that's okay because I literally just picked up my boat yesterday.
Yeah.
And a little bit late on getting. Usually, I have my boat by sometime second week of January, but I was a little bit delayed in getting in my order. But I think they knew that my season was starting later. Well, I knew they did know that my season was starting later, so they were able to get other anglers on the team their boats when they needed them before me, and so on and so forth. It's not a big deal, but I do need to get it wrapped, and so on and so forth. So yeah, it's nice to have kind of a later start, and I like the fact that the season it starts in March, and I believe the last one is in September. So and it's one a month, so that's great. I really like the fact that they're not all jammed in like 3 months, and then there's 2 months off. It's you're just one a month, and you get in different seasons, and then we're going everywhere from Florida to New York and here in Texas and just in Alabama. So you're getting a taste of different places all over the country, and I definitely think they have a really nice schedule this year.
So is there a tournament that you kind of have like pegged on your schedule that you're super excited about?
This is funny. We have a tournament here on Wright. No, is it Wright? Yeah, Wright Patman, which is about 2 hours from me, and it's the second event. I believe it's the second event, and I probably haven't spent I would say more than 2 days on that lake. And even though it's about 2 hours from me, I mean, Lake Fork's my home lake, and then I've got Tawakoni, Palestine, and Lake Athens, and so those are the 4 lakes that I guide on. And so generally, I just am in this section. But all that to say that we're going over to the Wright Patman, and I've heard a bunch about it. I'm excited about that one, even though I've not spent 2 whole days on that body of water. But I like Texas fishing. Texas fishing as a whole, to me, I love the way the fish act here. They really like sun, and the cover that they get around. I just like fishing for Texas bass. Though I like Florida, and I love New York, and man, that's definitely one of the big blessings of being able to, do this professional fishing. This is actually my 20th year as a full-time pro, and it's been a huge blessing. The Lord's blessed me with this career, and I'm just so thankful that I've got to travel around and see all these bodies of water at different times of year. And so I'm looking forward to it. They've got a great schedule, NPFL does.
Yeah, man. Well, I can speak for everybody when I say we look forward to watching you there. I appreciate you stopping in with us tonight, man. It's been a really good conversation. My whole thought process is if I learn something, somebody else is learning something, and I feel like you dropped a lot of great information tonight.
Well, I appreciate that, Tyler. Fishing, I love to what they call nerd out about it. I mean, and then just being able to discuss it with another angler that just loves the sport, loves the pursuit of them, and just getting out there and spending days on the waters. Anytime, I feel like, even though we don't know each other well, we're friends because we share that same passion for the sport and the outdoors. And kind of going back full circle to the forward-facing sonar thing, I think we can have differences of opinion as anglers. It might not be the thing that I want to do, but that's okay if other anglers want to. And that's the beautiful thing about our sport and living as an American. You have choices, and you can do different things, and we don't have to. It doesn't have to be a dividing line. We can just have different things that we like. So if anglers want to fish that way, go for it. I mean, it may not be the way I want to fish, but that's okay too. So I think it's, we shouldn't be disgruntled with each other, and we can have a difference of opinion, and it's all good.
Absolutely, man. I agree. When all that first happened, that's the first thing I said was, if some people want to have their own tournaments where they don't use it, then that's great. If some people still want to exclusively use it, that's great. But I just think that, yeah, at the end of the day, like, however you can enjoy fishing, I think everybody should be able to enjoy fishing.
Yeah, absolutely. And man, I'll tell you, I like to to fish for crappie, and using forward-facing sonar for that is a lot of fun. It is. It's a lot of fun to see those fish bite it and different things like that. It's just one of those things. As far as it is in competition, it's just not my cup of tea. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Man, we went out with a guide in at Toledo Bend, crappie fishing, and he's got live scope, and we're on a pontoon, and man, he's got it down. He's figured it out. But like, he'll be sitting there, and everybody will cast out, and he'll be like, "All right, you lift up, Tyler, lift up, James, lift up." Like, he's gotten to that point where like he's gotten it down, and dude, it's a lot of fun. It is.
I've heard stories about these pontoons that basically you can have like a party of friends that go out with these guides out on Toledo Bend and Sam Rayburn, and man, they do, like, I've heard they've got it down to a science, and I hear you can catch a mess of fish, have a lot of fun, and just enjoy a day on the water with them. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, James, again, man, I appreciate you hopping on, and it's been an honor to get to talk with you, but sadly, we got to wind it down. So, man, I really appreciate you coming on, and I want to thank everybody for tuning in to another episode of the American South Fishing Podcast.